There we go. Welcome. We're going to get started here soon. It's good to see you. Oh my gosh, back to the shadow. The time of the shadow. And while we're talking about this, the most powerful shadow moon is coming up next Friday. So December 23rd's new moon is where we want to make sure we're crossing the way we want. So welcome back to part 2. I'm excited to get started and I have lots to cover. Of course, you are going to be able to get this replay. And I think I have most of your addresses. Some of you still haven't messaged me, and I can't wait to get your workbook sent out to you. So that will be shipped. I do not know if it's going to make it before Christmas. So probably not. I know Amazon is there's a lot of undeliverable messages and stuff I'm getting. So Christmas and Amazon, be patient, okay? But you will get a copy, and I'm excited for you to use it and enjoy it. So last week, we got into all of the different variants of the victim. I think that's where we ended. And I'm sure that as we were going through them, you would recognize different ones that we've experienced, and as well as what other people have experienced that we love. So I do want to go a little bit more into this and move along. So let's go back into the shadow victim, okay? And we have learned from the last class that the other archetype influences the way our personal victimhood expresses itself. And while there are many other variants, there's thousands of variants, actually. What I've covered is just a few. The list that we put together and went through last class will help you identify when we are experiencing this inside, as well as being aware of it when other people are experiencing it. So while we've covered these behaviors, there are some general symptoms. And I want to discuss these symptoms so that it's easier for you to realize when you've fallen into the shadow aspect of that victim, okay? Behavior that we will experience, no energy, okay? Like when I fall into my shadow victim behavior, no energy. I have none. Like, don't even ask me to do something. I could be in it in days. We allow ourselves to go through it, right? So for behavior, we'll have no energy, or we'll have a strong draw towards addictive behaviors. Okay, shadow tonight. Oh, what do I have? Oh, Baileys and milk, right? So sometimes our shadow self will crave things, okay? And it definitely does draw addictive behaviors. Also, the constant need to distract yourself. That is a shadow behavior where you have to keep yourself distracted, or you're blaming yourself, or you're blaming others. So blaming, complaining often and loudly, withdrawing from others. A lot of times we'll go toward inaction, or we'll go into a place of domination and control. I'm like, yep, check, 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 check. Our shadow emotions, we will experience feeling angry, frustrated, hurt, depressed, guilty, shameful, worthless, or we go into a place of hatred. And these feelings are clues to understanding how to transform our shadow self, right? We also have a storyline. So we have a behavior, we have an emotion, and then the shadow victim will put a story behind it, right? It's not my fault, or it's all my fault, or I'm always getting hurt, or no one really understands me. I didn't have a choice. What am I supposed to do? Right? This always happens to me, and so on. My son, he even says that we have like this Gibson curse. Okay. So those are some of the things that we will experience. And when we catch ourselves doing that, it is a sign that our shadow self is in play. It feels victimized in some reason. And the shadow victim always has expectations. So if all of a sudden we're feeling a certain way, it's because there's some kind of expectation that we either have on ourselves or others that we can't meet, right? And we've lost our boundaries of self-protection. So we lash out like we're this cornered animal or our beast. I love calling mine. My shadow is definitely a beast. And when that doesn't work, we pull in and we invert our strong emotions that's associated with the shadow victim into a deep place, or go into a deep depression or whatever, isolation, or however we do. But it takes a lot of weight and heaviness to hold down all of those emotions that come from the anger and that comes from the feelings or the hurt of victimization. And this weight is a burden of the shadow. Okay, it's the shadow's depression. So our shadow can actually go into a state of depression. And this depression usually alternates between some kind of eruption of strong emotions that's followed by depression, right? So if we have our big, strong emotions and we have our freak attack, okay, I think the village can hear mine when I freak, and then go into a depression, that is actually the cycle of the shadow victim. And a lot of things will trigger them. Letdowns, right? Letdowns can greatly affect our well-being. And one of the most powerful affirmations that I believe in, which I try to hold, but you'll even, those that know me personally, it's on my little about me thing. And it is, I do not expect anything from others. So their actions cannot be in opposition to wishes of mine. And that's kind of hard to live by when you do have expectations of others and you're constantly fighting that shadow. But if you can go into a place where you don't expect anything from others, so their actions cannot be in opposition to yours, to the wishes of you want, then you can celebrate more victories, right? Or you can accept disappointment when it comes. Either way, we need to surrender to whatever it is that we're experiencing, but we have to keep our faith strong and learn to accept what it is. So the shadow victim has become disconnected from our personal worth, right? We lose touch of our intrinsistic self. All of a sudden, we are placed into a place such as a victim, right? As a victim, if the culture devaluates who we are, we devaluate our behavior, or we accept this opinion that's about us. So then we belong to that. Or we're blaming outside forces or other people, even our own body, for how we feel and what happened to us is a response of feeling worthless and powerless, feeling stuck. When we're feeling separated from others and alienated from what we believe will make us happy. That hole is a common complaint of the shadow, and it only feeds into the belief that we are, worthless or undeserving. And when we believe that we are, we stop trusting ourselves. Like, do you realize that's how we stop trusting in ourselves? We all of a sudden deepen the separation and the sense that we are no longer belonging or worthy or deserving. And this creates an emptiness. And this emptiness and loss causes the shadow victim to become more involved in the things that it's been feeling, whether that's fear or addictions or whatever it is that is manifesting from this. But the shadow's victim power is frozen in time. And it takes us to look backwards to find the moment that we gave up in our power, right? So challenging the shadow isn't a small thing, because this energy is very powerful. And when our shadow is in a place of victimhood, we're even in more power. And the shadow, this power, is being experienced as the power to disempower. The shadow victim is an expression of the root chakra wound, right? Think of our insecurity, right? Who we are. So this root wound, where survival and the need to belong predominates. So chakra work is actually very powerful to keep ourselves in balance. Our meridian is connected to our inner and outer worlds, right? So fear is a strong motivator for survival, and it is a feature of the shadow victim, right? Fear-based information feeds the shadow victim and causes you to look outside of yourself for comfort, for answers, for support, for help, for empowerment. And when you look outside of yourself for the answer, your awareness diminishes and your consciousness lowers. And the shadow victim encourages us to be afraid of this change and uncertainty. And this causes two reactions: domination, which is a proactive control, or helplessness, which is a passive control. And both reactions prevent the transformation of the victim archetype. So the challenge for the victim is this: should I give up my power in exchange for not being at fault? Or can I take the responsibility for what is happening to me and recognize the power that I do have? So we want to go into the next stage, which is the enlightened victim, right? Feel the fear. We all have fears. And when I learned to love my fears, and even though I have fears, don't get me wrong, I still have fear of heights. Now I have fear of flying, even though I used to love going places, right? So we will invoke and fight different fears all the time, right? We need to feel the fear. We all have fears. And where your fear is, there is your task. Fear of success. What's your task, right? Fear of speaking, what's your task? So a good way to begin transforming the shadow victim into the enlightened victim is to feel the fear and do it anyway. And that was one of my biggest enlightenments in my life, is why do I have this fear that speaks to me? Why does my fear say, no, you can't do that, when I know I can? Why is it speaking? And for me, listening to my shadow and these fears put me into a place where I realized that it's untamed energy, that there's no reason why it wouldn't speak if it wasn't important, right? So for me, it was a sign. I turned it into a sign that this is important because I hear fear, and fear doesn't exist. So I would do it anyway, right? Like in The Wizard of Oz, all of the main characters are representations of the shadow victim in various forms. You have Dorothy as the long sufferer, right? Who is blameless and uninformed, The Tin Man, the robot, disconnected and judgmental, the cowardly lion, weakling who is unwilling to act and full of fear, the Wicked Witch of the West, right? The Crusader, where she recruits others, the flying monkeys, to do her bidding and wants to victimize others and feels entitled to the ruby slippers. And the wizard is righteous, feeling misunderstood, and seeks fame of importance to cover up his insecurities. And being afraid and not running from fear is the first step to transforming ourselves and to transforming the victim, whether that victimhood is in our present life now or in our past, right? But we can find our personal power in that. And the enlightened victim understands that real power comes from within, and it's bound up with personal responsibility. So when you are the enlightened victim, you can't blame others because you can see that the loss of power happens from within. It would be useless to look for empowerment where it doesn't exist. So the enlightened victim asks, what can I do with the situation that I have been given? There is a great scene when you look at and watch The Lord of the Rings, right? Where Frodo is feeling victimized by the fact that the ring of power has come to him, right? And he says to Gandalf, I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had happened. And Gandalf said to him, wisely, so do all who live and see such times. But that is not for them to decide. We all have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. There are other forces at work in this world, Frodo, besides the will of evil, right? Bilbo was meant to find the ring, in which case you were also meant to have it. And that is an encouraging thought. And that's where Gandalf shows Frodo where his true power lies, that there are some things in life that are not for us to decide, but when we decide what to do with what we have been given or what has happened to us, it is a very encouraging thought. And sometimes we're not aware of how powerful we are or how much control we have in our lives. Sometimes being, thoroughly victimized and will allow us to see where our real sources of power is inside of ourselves, right? And that's our human freedom. Human freedom is to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance, to choose one's own way. And sometimes the very act of being victimized can be the portal to reconnecting with our true power. And we've all experienced it. Think about it. When people have crushed us and we've lifted ourselves back up, when we've been, ridiculed, but also stood our ground and kept moving forward. So the enlightened victim has learned the power of compassion through personal experience. The enlightened victim has found victory and wants to support others however it can be done. But the victim in both the shadow and the light, and how compassion becomes a part of the enlightened victim, speaks loudly, right? The victim is very good at helping us become aware of patterns that don't work and behaviors that result in heartache and pain. But it is not enough to see what isn't working. It's at this point that the enlightened victim sets boundaries, and setting boundaries is a two-part process. Okay, at least for me it was. First, you have to know what works and doesn't work. Okay, so like what boundaries will actually work in your life and what don't. In other words, you definitely need to find your spiritual, physical, emotional, and mental thresholds. Understand your limits, because when your limits are crossed, shadow comes into play. So we could actually observe our limits and understand where they are, and then name them for yourself, right? Name or define your values to help you discover your limits. and why you have them in the first place, right? I'm never going to marry a bum again, right? It took me for everything, right? There's a personal rule, right? So the enlightened victim is aware of exactly where your boundaries are and why your boundaries should be maintained. And the enlightened victim, in order to protect those boundaries, is very direct and straightforward, leaving no room for the shadow victim to squeeze in, right? But understanding that feeling anger is a good way to tell if your boundaries have been crossed and victimization is about to begin. So the enlightened victim helps you understand and define what boundaries will be, right? And then it lets you know when those boundaries are about to be violated. And then learning to direct and, be assertive when the shadow is transformed, right, from victim to the enlightened victim. And having and maintaining healthy boundaries really makes it much more difficult for others to take advantage of us, right? Like, I know that people definitely sense a strength in me and I don't feel like I am that strong that they sense, right? But I would never want anyone to see that I'm powerful. So you never are able to maintain, you will never be able to maintain good boundaries if you don't learn to take responsibility for the loss of those boundaries. And to me, that's interesting. So the enlightened victim is not afraid of weakness. It's not fragile. Okay. And even though we may feel that, the energy is strength. So if you learned that power can be found even in the shadow aspect of feeling like we're a victim to ourselves or others, then we no longer are afraid of failures, losses, tragedies, or suffering or misfortune, because none of those outer circumstances has power over our life. Right? We learn to be vulnerable, and vulnerability is the keystone of our strength because it allows us to discover different kinds of power, and it helps us recognize the strength of openness, right? Are we willing to be changed by our circumstances without losing our power? Don't let yourself lose power with your circumstances. And let's go into relationships too, because we all have good relationships that are healthy for us. And we also have toxic relationships, right? Both of those relationships are going to have to do, and it will affect our positive and negative. So whether those relationships are personal or professional, it is important to know that our shadow self pays close attention to those around us. Instincts are in play, trust is in play, loyalty, balance. All of our suppressed emotions lead to some kind of breakdown. And so our relationships work like karma. And what we pick up in our relationships creates the breakdown of what it is we're going to experience. And this can be instant or it can be a long-term effect, but it affects us psychologically. It is really important to have people in our life, at least one person, someone that you can trust. And many people don't have anyone. And if that is the case, I do suggest you to seek out a group or connect to someone that you may feel could be a mentor or a friend. But you do need to have somebody in your life that you can speak to, right? Or we can take a course. There's courses on how to be one for others as you seek one for yourself, right? We are naturally meant to have someone to count on. And again, if you don't have that, the universe will guide you to one. You just have to be open. And if you do have someone you can rely on and trust, that's great. Then let them be part of your growth and evolution. Let yourself be real in the light and the dark. You deserve to manifest everything you truly want and more. So every relationship is an opportunity of self-growth. And we want to be thankful about that, but always move on, whether it's negative or positive, right? Our parents play a huge part of our shadow self. Some people have had fantastic parents, while some people have had horrible parents. Some may not have had parents at all. But you do need to consider your parents and your guardians and how you were raised and what experience it is that you experienced. Because up until a certain age, we're all forced to live in their conditions. I learned in my life that I was completely powerless and had no other option. I had to live the life I had to until I could become my own independent self. And that's actually when my healing path began. That was my freedom. And even if the household was a positive, loving environment, we are molded and evolve because of our environment. And the level of our evolvement is up to us. And that is our unique ability. That's ours, right? So my personal life and path is about having freedom, being able to just be, okay, without traumas that my healing path requires, and it can and will happen. But we do have freedom in between the triggers. Okay, whether we had parents that never said I love you or parents that did, whether we had parents that asked us if we were okay or parents that never did, it's important to let yourself reflect on your younger self and honor the good and the bad feelings. And once you understand them, you can take action. But you may also be able to understand certain patterns or situations that occur. So for me, anybody that knows me, okay, they know I have car issues, okay? Like I have an abnormal amount of car issues in my life. It's been a thing, okay? And they're not just little car issues either, okay? 3 vehicles and they all take turns shutting down. It's a total pattern. And I've had this issue with vehicles ever since my very first car. And I even actually have a brother that won't even let me sit in the front of his truck because he's worried I'm going to mess it up. Either way, my biggest dream is my freedom to be. I love going on drives. That's my number one thing. Take me for a drive in the back road. I always wanted to be a nomad. I'm meant to travel. I love going on adventures. I want to see the world. My freedom, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, is my purpose in life. And I believe that I help people find the freedom and the purpose they need in their life. So I created a healing path that has helped me evolve in a magical and mystical way, because I found to work with my shadow, when I realized that it wants the same thing as me. Your shadow and everything it wants the same thing that you want, your higher self wants. And we've all had messed up experiences, but they do need to stay in the past. You do need to come to terms and honor the fact that your strengths do come with your roots. I love that through my traumatic experiences, I heard a voice that kept me safe and sane. I also hear the darkness of that voice when it's invoked. And because I listened to my inner voice and I walked the path of understanding myself, not trying to understand the ones that did me wrong, I was able to create a path that I'm on now. And I do love it. I am doing what I want to do. I am manifesting my dreams, as you are. So as you learn to know yourself, you will also learn that we are a different person every day. We're never the same. And when we wake up the next day and we feel like yesterday, it's untrue. You're not. We're all different every day. And we're all the good, the bad, the ugly, the unhealed person can become the healed. The bad people can become good people. Good people can become bad people. It's all about personal morals and the levels of consciousness that we live in. And we all love, but we also hurt at the same time, right? It's a flow. It's a flow of the life force of the yin and yang, for example. Okay. Comparison and competition is also something that invokes a doubt. And when we experience doubt, we live with it. We really do not know how worthy we are when we compare ourselves. So have you ever found yourself not being able to stand someone's actions or their behavior or their personality, but you don't know why? I mean, I do. Okay. My instincts, I'm telling you, I know if I like them or not, right? But when we become aware that someone has affected us in this way and realize that these feelings just came from nowhere, like it just happened in this unconscious way, it is a reflection and a message that we're suppressing ourselves. So for example, a positive person can get on our nerves when we're not positive, right? So how do we feel about others that put us into a state of being or unbeing? Being aware of how other people make us feel is important. Have you ever been around someone that drains your energy? They're psychic, they're energy vampires, right? Maybe you have one in your life. Could you imagine having 4 psychic vampires in your life? Or even a dozen of them in your life? Like, what would you do? Right? You don't want to reflect on it, but my point is, we do not want to be sucked dry. Our energy is sacred, and so is our energy levels. And our energy level is our individual life force. So we want to pay attention to our energy levels. But when you experience a drain, we have to do something about it to revive our energy and spirit. You need to receive energy and get into a flow until you feel like your normal energized self. You need to learn how to revive your spirit. Then we can actually learn how to limit our time around people who are draining our spirit, or we can wear protection things, whatever it is that will protect you from energy drains. But competition is part of it. And competition can be healthy for the right reasons, right? If one is competing to be enough, or because he or she feels inadequate, then that will create further feelings of low self-worth. But if you're competing because you love your passion and you want to evolve as a person for yourself, then it can be seen as healthy, right? You take what you like in others and you see how you can create that in your own life. We also all experience the void. Like, think about your heart. Think about that piece that's missing, right? The void. We all have a void, and it's actually a void connection. I love my void. I love my little piece that's leading me to my wholeness. To me, that was like one of my strings in life. Where is spirit going to take me? So the void, our void connection, we all have an empty space. It's somewhere in you. Maybe it's in your heart, and that has a void that's waiting for its destined fulfillment and freedom. Our shadow side and our higher self creates the void. The two of them create the void together. It's the path to wholeness. the space to become. And many of you have heard me in some of my other classes that I believe all of the magic we create comes from that dark matter, that void, and that void is within us. And it's around us. It's above and below. As above, so below is the void. So this space is the space to become. So when we experience that feeling of emptiness or that we feel that void, it actually appears for a message. And it's a message that we need to focus on our wholeness. Get your focus back to seeking what it is that your shadow self needs. How are you feeding your shadow? Our shadow, it needs food. It needs something to go after within the void. The space between the realms has something to deliver, and your shadow side wants to bring something into your existence, something into your life, helping you feel that wholeness you are seeking. The void is our universal connection to all things that have not manifested yet. It is a space that comprehends our true being into manifestation. The void is the spiritual life force. It's not good or bad. It is. It's actually our will power. And with the willpower, there's a few ways that we actually connect to it. With our inner vision and our outer vision. Did you know we have both? So people with an outer vision get information from the stimulation of their external reality. Inner vision is all about crafting the imagined reality first. Okay? Think of it this way. You're trying to get a raise, but you're not sure how to go about it. But someone with inner vision could close their eyes and get the idea of how to get it, what to say. Okay. So I want to go into the mask. We all have masks. Actually, we wear many different masks. A different mask for each relationship we have in our life. Think about the people in your life and the mask you wear, the persona that you take on. Our shadow is all of the things, the positive and the negative that we've denied about ourselves, that's hidden beneath the surface of the mask we forgot that we're wearing. I'm sure we are all automatic when we're around our mothers, right? And I'm sure we're quite different when we're around our best friends on a Friday night. Okay. So every single person in our relationship knows us as someone differently. And there's this cool poem that I want to share, Masks of Shadows. I think it is quite neat. So masks of shadows, we hide behind our veils, protected from eyes with closed minds, meanings distorted by merged hues, blurred by a false sense of self, shadows created by lies and half-truths, covered by gestures, accepting that which is familiar, we lose sight of who we are, shielded by intentional denial, we find ignorance, like heavy blinds, offering little to no transparency, letting in the desired amount of light, controlling who we allow inside while dimming our own shine, feeling safer behind the scenes, afraid of who we weren't meant to be. We pass each other in shadow form, avoiding the true reveal with no risk of rejection. Slight glimpses of us trail away, drifting into ethers of escape, crying out to be hidden no more, hesitant to shed our masks. We remain our shadow selves. I mean, I think it speaks for itself, right? So there are ways on how to tame the beast. So I want to get into some more cool stuff about it. So how do you tame the beast? I like calling it the beast. You could call it whatever you want. Well, the first thing we need to do is acknowledge our shadow self, right? The shadow is a pile of everything we experience that we don't understand, or all of the negative things we felt and experienced. It's a negative memory, and many negative memories that pop up to remind us that we do need to focus on ourselves. So our energy is to make sure that transformation is upon us. When we are in a denser state, it's time to release. So if we go into our negative thinking, remember, that's a sign, right? So we need to focus on ourselves, as well as self-talk. There's magic in self-talk. And this part actually does take a little training. I did this for an entire month. So if you do this for a month, your mind will change. So turn every negative thought into a positive. Okay? You have a negative thought, fight it with something positive right away, because it neutralizes your mind and it puts you into a balanced state. The higher self will come forward, right? The negative mind, the mental habits will actually tame. So if you have mental habits that are negative, this is an exercise you need to do, because all of a sudden positive ones will start to take place automatically. And so you need to neutralize that negative thought every time until all of a sudden positive ones are starting. There's no more negative ones. The positive ones are in power. And that's when your divine self speaks. And I really learned that. I used to tell my negative thoughts to fuck off. Every time I had one, fuck off. And then I'd say something, no, I want this. And I had a mental dialogue with myself for an entire month. And so you want to start this inner dialogue, because you can learn from your shadow by having a conversation with it. But to do this, you do have to use a process that is similar to meditation. You have to ask your shadow questions and wait for an answer. So start question answering. Why does this person piss me off? Let your shadow self tell you, because he's an asshole, right? Do you ever have a thought when you're sitting there experiencing and all of a sudden an asshole pops in? Shadow, right? Or maybe the spirit world. So we do have to do that. Have a conversation, okay? Keep an open mind, even if it feels weird. Take note on the answers you're getting and make sure that you're listening without judgment. Don't listen to yourself with judgment. And the other way to commune with yourself is engaging in an inner dialogue. Like, schedule some time where you can be alone and uninterrupted and engage in a dialogue with yourself for heightened self-awareness. I do that with my first cup of coffee. Every single morning, I have an inner dialogue on what I should be focusing on, what I observe, what it means, right? So you can have a conversation with yourself. You can even grab a pen and paper to write a list of things that rub you the wrong way, right? And that will help you determine what your shadow is made of. The other thing we want to do is accept. We need to accept all the dirty, negative, shameful experiences and go into a higher state of consciousness that will allow ourselves to be without judgment, right? When I'm a dirty bitch, I grin now. Okay, because I know there's worse ones out there, right? And something came out, right? Like, whoa, that bitch came out today, right? Like, it's kind of, you gotta honor it. Don't be ashamed of negative feelings. We don't need to understand the shameful experience of why it happened, but we do need to understand what it meant for us and why we experienced it the way we did. So it represents our inner things that need to be surfaced for us to accept ourselves for the actions or the inactions, but also to heal within our present conscious awareness. Okay. Honor and respect. Like, it's okay to feel negative. It's okay to make mistakes, but be responsible. So many people hold high regard to the things that they've done, and yet they don't fix it. Take care of your feelings, the positive ones and the negative ones. Honor them, but seek to know them. What is your shadow side protecting? It's time to seek what it is that you really require, right? The ego and your persona are your entire conscious self. The persona is the ego, right? It's part of you, the mask you wear in any given situation. And we have multiple personas, different masks we wear for different people in our life. And all of the different personas are part of your ego. Okay. So for example, if you're a musician, the persona would be part of your conscious self that you present, that you're present during your work, right? You have to play, but you may temporarily take off the mask during your lunch break while you're having meetings with some old friends. You're not sitting there having music time. Or if you're having lunch with your colleagues, you may keep your musician persona on the side, right? Composed, because you're working with other colleagues, right? You may pull out a different mask while discussing something else altogether, than a conversation you had about something else. So we do over-identify with our social masks, right? And it's to the detriment of other important areas of our psyche, right? Us as a son, or us as a daughter, a wife, a husband, a job title, a friend, a good citizen. But who are you? Because a persona is a compromise, right? It's a secondary reality in making which others often have a greater share than we do. It's a social mask of each of us wear with our interaction with others in society. So as you explore this topic, you'll realize that the persona is not the totality of our being, but rather a small component of a much larger personality, right? We all have a dark side, but mine is like a deep shade of indigo, right? We need to come face to face with it, okay? Understanding our persona is where we actually encounter the shadow, right? So I don't know if you've researched Carl Jung, but I definitely want you to research him. There's some really good books. He's one of my favorite people, so that's one of the reasons why I include this. But he stated that the shadow, to be unknown dark, is the side of the personality, right? It includes everything outside the light of consciousness, and maybe positive or negative. Everybody carries a shadow. And the less it is embodied by the individual's conscious life, the blacker it gets. So the shadow is nothing more but the residue of the instincts and emotions and behaviors, right? It's the individual repressed to gain social acceptance of some kind, right? And when we receive negative feedback or punishment from a family, or it creates anxiety. And then the individual hides these traits because they want to gain the social acceptance, and these traits get pushed away from our awareness into the unconscious, where they form the shadow, the darker side of one's personality, to become aware. And then it integrates the shadow into one's personality. And it wants to become a hero. And failure to do it will create chaos in our life, because the shadow then becomes an active undercurrent that interacts with our conscious self and constantly influences our thoughts, our emotions, our actions in a manner that is beyond our conscious control. And often the shadow shows up in our life through projections, right? Instead of seeing the disagreement elements of the shadow in itself, it projects these traits onto others. And if an individual makes an attempt to see their shadow and become aware of it, you don't want to be ashamed of it, because those qualities and impulses, anything we deny, right, this goes back into it. So our ego, our mental laziness, being sloppy, unreal fantasies, schemes, plots, carelessness, like I don't care, right? All of these need to be part of our self-education. It's part of our life. Okay. So I want to go into the anima and the animus. Jung said that the encounter with the shadow is the apprentice piece of the individual's development. That is the anima. It is the masterpiece. So Jung identified the archetype anima as being the conscious feminine component of men. And the archetype animus is the unconscious masculine component in women. And Jung stated that the anima and the animus act as guides to the unconscious unified self, and that forming an awareness and a connection with the anima or animus is one of the most difficult but rewarding steps in psychological growth. So the encounter with the anima represents a connection to the unconscious, right? This unconscious is even deeper than the shadow. The shadow shows up, right, with all of these unwanted qualities, but the anima is the contact with levels of the psyche that has potential to lead in the deepest and the highest reaches that the ego can attain. So to me, the shadow and the ego are meant to work together. And Jung viewed the anima process as being one of the sources of creative ability. Right? What do you want to create? So in cases where the anima or the animus are ignored, okay, and they are fighting for attention by projecting itself on others, this explains, according to Jung, why we are sometimes immediately attracted to certain strangers. We see our anima or our animus in them, right? Love at first sight is an example of anima and animus projection, right? People who strongly identify with people, right? They have not actively recognized, they don't know, but that connection is there, okay? And bringing those elements of the shadow into the light of consciousness is essential if one is to correct our less desirable aspects in life. The shadow carries in it the hidden source of nourishment that, we want, that we need for our problems in life. So it can be a source of renewal over the established values of what the ego wants, right? And when things get into their extreme, they turn into their opposites. Okay. So some of the things that are important is the inner child. Okay. Our inner child is our neglected inner child, right? It's our greatest opportunity for building strength. It comes from work with healing our wounds. The shadow is where our pain hides, awaiting for the light of our attention. And it lies beneath the distractions of workaholism, as well as comparing, right? So our inner child healing is a foundational part of shadow work. Childhood traumas or the way we are parented can result in deep wounds that can create behavioral or emotional patterns, and even ones that we are unaware of. Okay. But in most cases, our shadow self is holding on to the desires of our inner child and just wants to be seen in the same way as the other parts of ourself. So shadow work helps us uncover repressed feelings, thoughts, and memories so that we can accept and heal our shadow, bringing it to the light, right? The repressed emotions would be all the things that we're taught as a child, right? Not to feel if you wanted to be loved, right? We don't feel it. So if we were only offered attention when we're good, right? You might find that the inner child holds rebellion or sadness and anger. Or if you experience trauma or abuse, you would have learned to hide pain and fear to survive. So the inner child can also hide all of the things that we were taught to think about ourselves by our parents, our teachers, other adults, other kids. And this can sound like, you better not say what you really think, right? How many times have you heard that, right? Or you're dumb, or don't do that, it won't work, or, sex is dirty. And all of this is actually quite important because assessing our inner child allows us to find the roots of our issue as an adult. Inner child work can help us discover and release our repressed emotions, but it can also help us realize what we're holding back. We can recognize unmet needs, assisting us to resolve unhelpful patterns, right? Opportunity for increased self-care, helping us to create and also create a playful self-respect, right? Putting us on a healing path. So the inner child was actually created as a self-help type movement and has become quite important in the spiritual and personal transformation theories. So you can do many things to heal and work on your inner child, from inner child healings through meditation, hypnosis, acknowledging your feelings, listening, writing a letter to yourself or others, journaling. Find your state of joy. That's what the inner child is about. Be open, find your state of joy. And Carl Jung included that a child archetype is in his list of archetypes that represents individualization, the development of the different parts of self into a functioning whole. But the true self is what we want to go for. Do you know your true self? How often are you your true self? Can you be your true self daily? Right? Being our true self means that we acknowledge and honor everything about ourselves, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the divine, right? We are complicated beings of consciousness and very powerful. So whenever we're true to our feelings, or the more we deny them, the more we move into our true self or out of our true self, right? And all of us have experienced an argument, right? And later on, after that argument takes place, we're still thinking of it. We're internalizing all the things you should have said, or maybe what you should have done, or maybe wish you would have said, or something else, right? We've all experienced that. We all look at the situation as internalizing, but it's actually true, authentic communication. It happens because there is fear to resistance to believe that what you said was heard or enough, right? It's perfectly natural, but it is a sorting and organizing ability that comes forward to help put us into a place from this experience. The level of consciousness develops from that future interaction. It's also a sign that you need to focus on communication. Be confident and learn to find your communication skills. They don't have to be strong, but they do have to be said. And the way you express and communicate yourself will be understood when you're in communication with your true self. So the things that you do not say will scream the loudest within. Okay. So signs that your shadow work is working, that you're connected to your shadow self. Other people's behaviors don't trigger you like they used to, right? You don't even have time or the mentality to blame or go into a place of denial. You drop it. You also judge other people and yourself less. And you recognize that you've become part of someone's shadow. Okay. And you're no longer afraid to be seen. And your life will become more peaceful. Okay. So I know we are almost done here. And I didn't even go into the different archetypes. So when you do get your workbook, don't do all your workbook all at once. Okay. Just do it as you feel. But you will also have all of the different archetypes. And there's actually like hundreds, thousands of archetypes. Okay. But what I put together is a generalized list, right? Based off of Carl Jung. And it will help you recognize the different archetypes that we go into. So we're always connected to one of the archetypes that I put in the workbook. Okay, so let me just pick one for right now. Okay, let me see. So one thing I do want to talk about is working with your shadow, right? Putting it into a growth mindset instead of a limited mindset. So it's true, we are our own limitation and our growth is only generated by us. But if you actually take a look at successful people, they actually have a mindset, right? They're willing to learn from their obstacles or constructive criticism. They admit to learning openly. They're not on a defense. All experiences as an opportunity to evolve, but they move swiftly through challenges, right? They want to get through that stuff as fast as they can. I believe that too. The faster I can get through a problem or an issue, the faster I can move on to the next thing. But they also put in the effort and a dedication that it comes to the desires that they want. And with that, they have to have their mindset. They have to have their free will make decisions rather than operate from negative patterns. So they take negative patterns and they transcend it into opportunities. And they are successful because they solve problems in order to get their desires. They don't give up. Okay. So I want you to go into some of these exercises and know that it is going to transform. It is meant to transform certain mindsets, get you out of limited mindsets into growth mindsets for yourself. Okay. But there is also a 10-step way to attract the life you want in there. Okay. So I do have that in the workbook, as well as, let me just see, the archetypes. So I'm going to go through 12 different archetypes. And these archetypes that I'm using are ancient. They're universal symbols and characters that reside within the collective unconscious of people all over the world. So as you're learning about this stuff, you're also learning about me and everybody else around you and everybody else in the world. So as you learn and as you master yourself and understand the archetypes and recognize them in other people, like, oh my God, that person is this shadow archetype, use it as a tool, right, to get what you want, you'll find that this is actually a guiding system that can inspire you, that can give you the possessing power to change things through our living day, every day. Okay. So for example, archetypes influence 99% of our human behavior. 99% of our human behavior is not ourself. So when you've got clicks in this class and you're seeing situations, right? That's normal. You aren't fucked up, right? That's normal. Everything you've experienced is normal life force. So there's nothing for you to be ashamed of. Okay. So one of the first archetypes, I'm just going to do this. One of the first archetypes is the ruler, right? The ruler archetype is all about control. They want power. Our ruler self, control, power, and order, right? Its shadow form is the tyrant. The ruler strives for excellence and wants everyone around them to reach their potential, right? They're natural leaders. They're decisive and they have a clear vision. But it's also referred to as the father type in some philosophies, right? The shadow ruler is known as a tyrant. And this archetype takes control to the extreme. They are repressive. They're oppressive, right? They're dictators. They want to identify with themselves and they constantly need to prove their worth and power. So they might also feel the need to micromanage those around them, right? So every aspect of the self has a shadow side. Now, one of the reasons that I got involved, and you'll learn all of those, and you'll see where you were at different aspects in your life. Different situations bring out the different shadows, right? And the positive aspects of the archetypes. So each archetype has a positive and a negative, right? But shadow magic is always connected to the new moon. The new moon holds great power. So whenever there's a new moon, it's the shadow's moon. In traditional occult practices, people did not practice new moon ceremonies because it was believed to be dark magic. Dark magic for the new moon ceremonies and light magic for the full moon ceremonies, our higher self and our shadow self, right? Some people perform both. They perform a full moon ceremony and a new moon ceremony. But during the new moon phase, the nights are dark and they're illuminated only by the natural light of the stars and other celestial objects, right? But the naked eye cannot identify the moon's proper position during this time. And this is due to the fact that the moon blends in entirely with the darkness between the stars. But during this time, the new moon controls our mind and our emotions and makes us mimic its behavior. So like the absence of the sun's light reflecting off the new moon, our awareness becomes easily darkened and hidden from view, especially around emotional and primal matters. And although the new moon may be hidden from sight, we should never underestimate its power and its influence upon us. So the new moon remains a powerful reminder of the importance of rest, contemplation, and rejuvenation. And on every new moon, it's actually designed to foster a connection, a reflection, and a goal setting. But know that the new moon marks the beginning of a 27-day cycle of fast-moving lunar phases that swell into the radiance of the full phase, and before waning back into the darkness of another new moon. The new moon also marks the first of what is most agreeable of the two phases, the new and the full. So like a magnet, the new moon draws out very specific experiences, external and internal contemplations that we are meant to go through. So it's a good time to actively consider what you want to manifest for the rest of the month, but set your intention and focus on your efforts. but know that these intentions, these focusing, this effort is considered shadow magic, because those things that you are putting on your paper has to do with what your shadow self wants. It's also an opportunity for us to set our emotional tone and be receptive for the rest of the month. So take note on what you experience leading up to the new moon, right? Because this is the time that you need to keep your cool during this transit. Don't panic. Don't get too irritable with the dark. Whatever you do, just be mindful that the dark moon is with us. Because during the new moon, the motives behind any activity we undertake is shrouded in some kind of mystery. Motives behind the activity of others become unclear. So be warned, our instincts take center stage during the new moon. So it is, the primal that we enter in the absence of the full moon light. And it's a very magnetic time, full of opportunities, but spontaneous, unplanned experiences, right? And this activity arises during this time to lead us into a place of confusion, as well as put us into activities that will put us into a certain undertaking during the time of the moon. And it can be untidy situations. We don't want to overindulge. So remember, the new moon is an amazing time for beginnings, but it's important for us to be as mindful as possible to stay positive. We need to guard against a variety of negativity with our willpower whenever the new moons come up. And whatever energy we do feed during the new moon, it will be stored in our vault and amplified for the next month. And this can be positive or negative, so be careful. For new moons, I like to focus on healing. I do my drumming, right? I'll light a healing candle. I like to do healing work during the new moons, regenerate my energy, because the new moon is an energy regeneration. So new moon is a time to rest, right? The flash is out, there's no light, and now you can recharge in the dark until the lights return all the way to the full moon time. We have an opportunity to use this battery for the rest of the month. It will manifest something that is constantly on your mind. So again, make sure you're sending out energy you want during the dark moon phases. And I know I'm almost done. This is a powerful time for us that we can spiritually get closer to change, right? If we can relax during the new moon and slow our body system down and create a clear focus of our emotional being and what can be done, like what we want, then we have the ability to pull that power in to normalize our life, right? We go into a place of shifting energy that will complete the change that we want. As long as that place is in wellness, we can actually create the life that best suits us by focusing on the new moon, right? We all know that there's a time when there's harvest time, right? Harvest comes at the arrival of a full moon. Well, there's plenty of light revealing what you've been planting along in the previous cycle. It's like planting a seed. We're consciously nurturing something that our shadow self needs, right? So we want to keep the weeds out of the way and let our shadow do its magic, okay? Now, the energies of the new moons are different every month, and they correspond to the astrological powers that are influenced by that new moon. So in the workbook, there is a list of the new moon energies, and you'll be able to see the influences in your own horoscope sign as well as others. So if you do know that these traits are natural and universal, you can use these traits and create magic that is uniquely yours. So remember that the new moon is a lunar cycle with its own unique influences. And the full moon is also a lunar cycle with its unique spiritual correspondences. But together, they are also a cycle as you go through the phases of the moon. Okay. So I am excited for you to get this, and you'll be able to see how the new moon corresponds with each sign. So when you see new moon in Gemini, you'll know what it's going to do to you. Okay. So what is a new moon coming? I got peek. What is December's new moon? New moon in what? I just got to peek and see what it comes up as. Capricorn. Duh, I should have known that. Duh, it's December. Okay. So the new moon in Capricorn, let's do that. And then I'll pull some cards and we are done. So new moon in Capricorn. Capricorn is associated with success through hard work. And a new moon is associated with a fresh start. So you can see how this would be a combination that you're looking for to turn up on your business, job, or financial situations. When there is a new moon in Capricorn, the stars are aligned for a new chapter of success. So what does your shadow side need to feel for success, right? It doesn't matter what star sign you are. When a new moon occurs in Capricorn, you'll feel it. You're influenced by this energy. So when there is a new moon in Capricorn, it's a good time to make plans for the year ahead. Think about any changes you want to make in your career. If there's anything you want to study or travel plans you want to make, right? Give all of your dreams and visions full permission. Don't hold back. Start setting your intentions and begin creating your reality with this next new moon, which is what? Next Friday. Okay. So I also have new moon bath for you in there, drinking new moon water, how to sit in silence and connect, new moon healing and new moon banishing candles, as well as a new moon chant that you can enjoy. Okay. Whew. I think I covered it all. That was a lot of talking and I didn't cover it all. So there is more in your books. So with that, let's pull a new moon. I want to pull some cards. I got to pull a card. I have to get it. Okay, 1 second. Let me get my card and then we're done. Okay, and if anyone has any questions or anything they want to say, I do have the chat up. So I'm going to pull a new moon, your first shadow self new moon experience. Show me the magic of the Capricorn new moon. Ready? So this is our magic, shadow magic for Capricorn. Protection. That is awesome. So we're all protected. That means our success, protect our success for 2023. Confidence. Ooh, the shadow wants to be powerful and confident. Okay, what else? Invoking your confidence as well. And spirit guide. It wants to be your spirit guide. Oh, I love that. And before you go, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I did. But one of the reasons why I got involved with shadow work was because many of you know, I do tarot for a reading, for a living, right? So I'm constantly doing tarot readings. And what I love about the shadow is that it is actually the tarot reversed. So for any of you that practice the tarot cards and the readings, reversed cards are the shadow aspects of the self. So just keep that in mind, that when you get reversed cards, it is the shadow self in play. But that's how I learned all about it, right? Like the major arcanas are destined power, right? We can't get rid of it. They're in the reading. That's the power, universal power. But when it's reversed, universal power invoked, shadow side. So for you tarot readers, check that out. Maybe do some shuffling and see which major arcana comes up reversed for you. Show me my shadow self. Okay. So with that, I'm going to let you go. This will be sent out tomorrow, and your books will be sent out. I can't wait till you try it. And I'd love some feedback on what you think of the shadow self and or what you found with yourself. So I love that. And I'll let you go. Thanks for joining tonight. Blessings. And Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm glad you loved it. That's awesome. Okay, good night.
Good night.